So most of you probably aren't too familiar with using the Tricaster.
How many have used it before?
Yeah.
Okay, just two.
Okay. Well, basically what I do, I'll tell you what I do every day pretty much when we do shows and ball games and stuff like that at Campbellsville. Ours looks exactly like this pretty much. You have your main screen here. Your shutdown function can take you back to like a normal computer screen. So if you have clips from a ball game, or if you have graphics, if you make something in Photoshop, or you have a slide, you can organize it in folders just like you would a normal computer for like schoolwork. You can access that through here. The open function is what's pulled up now, so you can see these past projects that have been started. You can go back and just recall them, and then the new function is how you would start a new session or a new project. So it's just as simple as typing in whatever you want the project to be, class, whatever, if it's a newscast, whatever, all like that. And then here you have your resolution. So depending on the cameras you use, if you're going to shoot high definition, 1080, if you're going to shoot 720, 480, and you should know that based on the cameras you have set up in the area or whatever. So I'll just leave this set up like it is, and once all that's ready, just start session. And to go straight into starting to produce and direct a show, just go to Start Live Production, and that will bring up just your regular features where you can switch between cameras, you can load graphics, you can record this, you can live stream it. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff you can do. But just for basic purposes, you got your 3 camera inputs here, camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, and they correspond with your switcher interface right here. So this bottom row is all your preview, so it's not actually going out live yet. Those are the cameras you're going to switch to whenever you're ready to make a transition. And then your live row is what is going out live, what people can see. Pretty simple. This interface, you can either do an auto. I know it's kind of hard to see because there's nothing like on the cameras right now. But you can see over here, whatever's going to be live is going to be highlighted in red. Whatever's in preview is going to be highlighted in green. So they correspond with your interface here. So it's just as simple as putting whatever camera you want in green and then hitting either take, which is just a straight cut to it, or if you want to do an auto, it's like a fade feature, which does the exact same thing as your little fader bar here. Now, you don't have to use this to switch cameras. You can do everything from here as well. You can select with your mouse, and you can do an auto, and everything is built in to do it from your mouse or your keyboard. But for more hands-on, real-life kind of experience, the switcher interface here is what you want to use. When you go to record, this little settings wheel will allow you to name anything specific other than what we titled this session. So if it's class and it's your news segment, you can do class-news. If you want to record a sports segment, once you're ready, you could rename it class-sports or whatever you're going to be recording. You can change that out. You can change the type of recording it will record for you. So right now it's set up in an MPEG 2. You can do just audio with an MP3. So depending on how you want to play it back can depend on how you want to encode it. So that's pretty simple. Usually it defaults to something you normally use. So once you're ready to record something, all you have to do is hit that record, So what we do, just for example, for us at Campbellsville, when we're ready for a show, I'll count down my camera operators, who will then relay that to my talent, so whoever's hosting the show. And right before I hit the open graphic, I'll hit that record feature, so I don't have like 10 minutes of black before. But if you want to, I mean, you can record for a half hour. After it's recorded, you can pull it into like Final Cut or Adobe Premiere. I don't know what you all use to edit, but you can pull it in there and cut off all the black. But so you got that. If you have any graphics like lower thirds, people's names, their description, what they do, you can pull them into your DDR here. And to load those graphics, it's as simple as going down to your Add button. You can have graphics here that are already built. Like here's one. Hit OK. And what I do usually for lower thirds is over here, your DSK, which is your downstream key. Basically, this will allow you to overlay video or graphics over what's going out live. So if camera 1 is in program and we want this logo or this bug or whatever to come on the screen, you can select DDR here on your downstream key. And what that allows you to do is if you select DDR1 here and you select fade overlay, it should just overlay it onto the screen. So but anyway, I don't know how you all do. You normally just put in
tiles, I think. Titles, I mean, next to
titles?
it.
Okay. That's how you usually put in the graphics.
With like the lower thirds.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you can put them in titles, stills. I just do it in DDR. Like I'll build our weekly coaches show. I'll put in our opening, lower thirds, all the highlights, and just kind of go through set order. Boom, 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 just kind of in order like that. And to remove stuff, it's as simply as right-clicking something, removing it from your DDR.
So, so you use the DDR like a server. So you put
It's like a-
your opens and your video
Right.
and everything, the packages.
It's kind of like a bin.
Mhm.
I just kind of put everything in there. I know it's all contained in that one area. So instead of having it DDR1s, stills, titles, I mean, you can organize it like that. If it's easier for you to understand, you know all your titles and lower thirds are going to be in your titles bin. That's fine. And again, your DDR, you have all these separate DDRs, bins, if you want to think of them like that. So if you want just your open and close in this first bin, you can do that. If you want highlights from a game in this second bin, you can just, it's as simple as selecting. And whichever one is selected, that's the one that's going to be pulling all the graphics and highlights from.
So what if you wanted to do a dissolve or an effect between two clips that it's in your DDR? Or you couldn't do that, right? You'd have to put something between the two between
Right.
those two.
Right.
Between those two elements.
Right. For instance, if you want to play something out of your DDR, you'll want this autoplay button selected. Because if that's not selected, you're probably familiar with this. If that autoplay feature isn't selected, if you go to put that in program, it's not going to play until you hit this play button. But I don't have a, let me see if there's any.
For those animations, those are
Yeah.
That's the photo.
Yeah. So if we want that to play, it won't actually play until we hit this play button. But with that autoplay feature selected, it'll play automatically once you have it selected. So, any other questions? Does it make sense? Again, for what you all are doing, just a weekly or daily little newscast here. Just being able to switch between your sources, 1, 2, and 3. It's as simple as taking, cutting back and forth, and then having all your graphics, if you have any, set up and ready to go. So, did you? Where do y'all make your graphics from? Are they here?
Blender.
Oh, okay.
So we just get the files from that.
Okay. I know within Tricaster there's a live text element that already has pre-built templates for like lower thirds or full screen graphics. You can open that application, make them, save them onto the computer, and then pull them in to your stills or anything like that. So Tricaster will let you do everything in-house, so you don't have to worry about making graphics or pulling them from someplace else. Even though you can do a lot of stuff here as well.
You wanna fire the camera? We were having a little bit of trouble yesterday
The green screen.
getting the
Okay.
clip right on the chroma key.
Okay.
We could get it to key, but it wasn't clean. And
Yeah, well, we do a green screen as well, and sometimes, just getting it right, the chroma key, sometimes to actually have a clean cut and everything can be kind of
Is
difficult.
it, see, I've never worked with Tricaster before. I didn't know if they were particular. We, the last switcher, I worked on with Sony just before I retired, but we had a Calypso, and it would key in the dark, most. It was really clean.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if we were doing something wrong, or
Well, the
if
thing,
we just didn't have enough light on it.
right, the thing about green screen is you have to have your lighting just right.
So with this piece of equipment, it's very particular about that?
It can be. Of course, you have free reign here, so again, underneath your camera settings, each camera has its own little settings wheel here, so you have control over the brightness. If it's too bright, if it's too dark, you can actually adjust that right here. You can adjust saturation, the color, overall color, if it's too red, if it's too blue. You can adjust those settings here internally. Underneath the live map and crop, again, what I do, I just try to match the color with the background, and it's as simple as just dragging that pin, and you can see.
So you can find a light source, so that's,
You want to find the shade of green that's closest to the overall background
and set the key to that.
and set it. And,
Calypso work that way.
and then if you need to tweak it some, you got your tolerance and smoothness. It's kind of hard to see without someone standing in front of it, but you got your spill suppression. So once you match that color, if you need to tweak it some, that's, you have your controls right here.
So, well, there was this little icon here that you drug
Yeah.
that into the.
You just kinda,
Select the camera.
yeah. So if you want it blue, you could do that. If it's green, it's this like an inkwell pen, like in Photoshop or
Maybe that's.
something like that
Did
to
you,
match.
did you do that? Did you?
I was going to the DVR, that's what the graphics said, and going to the green screen color and doing it. From what I remember.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's just do this. So, virtual one. Let's see. So your virtual sets, or if you just have a regular background, they'll be pulled in through these virtual inputs, which is your V1, V2.
So when you selected the virtual input, when you clicked on it, did it automatically go to program, directly to program, or?
I mean, it doesn't have to. I mean, these virtual inputs act just like a regular camera input.
Okay.
So you can, this switcher interface is a little bit smaller because you don't have your virtual inputs right here on the key, so you'd actually have to,
Physically go up there and click on it.
right. But,
Once they're there, then you can dissolve to it or whatever you want to do.
see, so you can just do that. And the cool thing about Tricaster is that with this autoplay feature on your DDRs or your stills or your titles, you don't have to worry about fading back automatically on your own. You don't have to worry about hitting that auto rotate again after the clip's done playing, because it'll automatically fade back to what's in preview. So,
What?
just for example, so if you have your anchor talking in the news, on the news segment right here, and they start talking about the weather, you have it queued up here in your DDR in preview, and with your autoplay selected, once you go to it, it'll automatically play, and once it's finished, it'll automatically fade back.
We don't do that. Yeah, we want to be able to make that choice to make that second transition.
And,
Because even if the graphic came up full, you want it to stay there long enough for somebody to read it. You see
Right.
what I mean?
right.
So can you disable?
Would it be single?
Mhm. Now the single means if you have like 5 or 6 sources in here, like 5 or 6 videos, it would just play one at a time, which is what you want. But if you're doing like highlights or something, and you wanted them all to play, you would just take that single off, and it would just keep playing until you told it to stop.
It would just go. It would just start with.
Whichever selected.
Go to the next one.
Mhm.
Now that would be.
Yeah.
So you've got really 3 options then. Single play, where it's your responsibility to make the transition to get off of it. And then autoplay, it makes the transition at the end of whatever it is, back to whatever's in preview.
Right.
And then the other option is to not select anything, and it just continues to go through whatever that is in that source.
Mm-hmm.
You see, if we could get to a point where we weren't editing the shows together and doing them live, we could, because right now, they record everything in a segment, and then they go and edit the show together.
Right.
Well, what I would strive for us to do by the end of the year is to be able to come in and put somebody on set and roll the show together, and when we walk away, it'd be done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the goal.
And that's what Tricaster is set up for you to do. I mean, you can load in all your graphics, your titles, everything. You sit on set, you hit 3, 2, 1, you're go, you're live, and you take it and you can drop in all your highlights, your graphics, everything as you're talking about it. Once you're done, you hit stop record and your file's right there.
That's the goal.
And Tricaster, once you start learning the basics, start learning and getting comfortable with how to direct a show and how to use the system, it really is simple. It's just about finding a rhythm that you're comfortable with, and everyone's a little bit different. How I direct is different from some of my students and how they direct shows. But as long as you have the basic concept down of starting and stopping, how you're switching, where you're putting your graphics, once you have that learned, then there's
Right.
really no end to what you can do.
Other than adding the graphics as the anchors read, or recording the chroma key, the shows we've done, you could almost take a camera anywhere and shoot the segment
Mhm.
and then edit the show together. Because basically all we've done with this is just add lower thirds and do the chroma key,
Mhm.
and then it's all edited together. So it's like, I feel like it's a lot of wasted energy.
Mhm.
I think the main problem is just getting like people's pieces back here
Yeah.
in time.
And deadlines.
Right. And that's the thing too. Like, you can send out teams to do a 30-second news story somewhere. That's our students when they do their local newscast that airs on our station. They have a deadline every Wednesday by like 5 o'clock. So at 5 o'clock, they're giving the director their 30-second news piece on a flash drive, and you're just loading it into the computer, pulling it in, and then your anchor, once they start talking about it, boom, you can play it out of that DVR, let them talk and do their story, and you don't have to worry about stopping, taking it in post-production,
Right.
laying it in, but it's all right there with your piece.
So that's the goal. It may be later, quite a bit later this year.
We've done it before, but
Yeah.
it was fine. But
Yeah.
just getting back to
Yeah, that's the main trouble. We end up with, if we did that, we'd end up with holes. We just have to drop stories and not have the show.
Right. But if you want a different kind of transition on your background here, it's default to fade. But if you want a flash, it's like a fade to white kind of look. You can change all kinds of stuff. You have all kinds of different effects you want to do. But if you want to keep it professional, look clean and stuff, usually fade is best. But for new shows, you hardly see a fade in between camera shots. Usually you fade in and out of like packages, so news story or sports highlights, you'll fade into that. But everything else is usually just a straight take. So just directly back and forth.
Generally, people like to use the wipes because they're funny, but they're not very professional. If you watch the evening news, you're not going to see those wild wipes usually, unless they are, clowning around for some specific reason to use them. Although, is that a little tile effect next to flash?
Yeah, it's like clouds. So I mean, you can go through here and
I don't know about that. Yeah.
there's like all kinds of different things you can look at. If you go underneath the settings and browse, I mean, you can different door effects, pinwheels, fans.
We have one that's like a sheet, basically.
Yeah, that's a sheet. Yeah, my students like that too. They like to.
You might get by with some of these, like the windshield or
Right.
the split, for something like sports,
Yeah.
But usually not much of anything else.
Usually sports is where you see some different transitions, just because it may add to the highlight or
Or
something.
maybe weather,
Mhm.
and it's usually because the director's bored and so on to do something. And that's the speed of the effect, the knob.
This?
No,
Oh,
this is the speed of transition of the effect.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
you can adjust that. You can see it if you want it slower, if you want a slower fade, or if you want it faster. It's
Does it give you a digital readout and stuff like that?
yeah, it's right here.
Oh, okay.
You can actually do it here, or you can see your cursor. You can actually click and drag. You can adjust the time
Is
as well.
that frames or time?
Frames.
Frames. So that's 30 frames?
Mhm.
Okay.
1 second would be 30 frames. Any other questions? Or?
How many think they could sit down now and work on a quick program? I'm not getting many hands in here. I'm getting tired.
I could probably play with it, but I don't know how to type it.
Right.
Once you start using it, it's pretty easy to understand.
If you can just, the thing, if you don't use the green screen or use a lot of graphics or anything, if you can get in here and have your cameras set up and you can take back and forth, start recording and stop recording, you can at least have a base program, and that way you can take it out, and if you need to edit any, if you want to drop it in your lower thirds, you can do that. And even if you're not to the point where you bring all your pre-recorded 30-second stories in and play them in here, if you can start recording and stop recording and just switch between your cameras, that way you have your base layer, and then you can take that out, put it on your computers, and put in your stories and graphics in post-production, and that will save a lot of time.
Right, yeah. And sometimes we end up in that situation. Once you get all the elements, you can put it together. So the newscast, the student newscast that you all put on, are they a specific length? Do you have a hard out time that they're supposed to hit?
There's they're not live on they don't go live, but in the fall semester, our 475, which is our upper level class, produces a weekly newscast that's it's supposed to be 5 minutes in length. We're looking at expanding that to a 15-minute or 30-minute broadcast, but it has to meet 5 minutes every week because that's part of our schedule. We have to meet with the cable company.
That's what the okay, the cable company.
Mhm.
So
We operate a local.
And the producer's the one responsible for
Right.
getting it off on time.
Every student in the class cycles through and they perform every job at least once during the semester. So there'll be a host one week, they'll be running camera the next, they'll be directing and actually using the Tricaster the next week. The week after that, they may be the producer, so they're in charge of making sure all the stories are on time, they're written well, and making sure everyone has their stuff in. So everybody gets hands-on in every aspect of what takes place in a newscast. Any other comments, questions?
Marty, are you comfortable enough, Tower, are you comfortable enough that if the students have a little trouble, because the best way to learn this is just get on it and do
Yeah.
it. Come in here and start to do it and get kind of hung up, that one of you could sort of get them through the basics now.
Well, just cutting cameras, it's pretty straightforward. And Tyler, he's familiar with the lower thirds, key in the lower thirds. Now, yesterday, he and I both fooled around 10 or 15, 20 minutes with the chroma key. We never did get a chroma key that was acceptable.
That's because we didn't have any of the lights, because they were all packed.
And that's what, we only had one light on it, and I told him, I said, well, I'm not familiar with this piece of equipment that much, and I didn't know how much, light was really required. Like the switcher that I left, like I said, it would almost key in the dark. It would really key well. And it works similar to this, where you pick out, for instance, if I were going to select my key spot here, I'd probably come over in here and click that.
Right.
And
you can, for future references, you can see on the green screen, you have warmer and darker areas. So when you set up your lights, just try to get as uniform a color as possible.
they have she has a new light kit,
Mhm.
a couple new light kits for
Three,
her.
yeah, new
But,
3-point light.
but they haven't arrived yet. Who knows when they will.
But the thing about the Tricaster is that basically the more you get in and do hands-on learning, just trying to mess around and teach yourself, the more comfortable you'll be at operating it. That's how I learned it. When we ordered it, we had a smaller one we used just for our sports production. But when we got our new big one for our radio, or for our control room, I pretty much just sat down for a couple days and turned my cameras on and just went through all the settings. I taught myself.
Right.
So really, someone can come in and teach you, and I can give you pointers and give you a base to learn on everything. But until you actually get in and figure out what the buttons do for yourself and actually push them, you'll learn quicker that way.
They would bring in manuals like this
Yeah.
thick.
Yeah.
So it's fine.
You couldn't.
You don't
learn
have
from it.
time to do the
Yeah.
manual and do the other work too. So,
Well,
yeah,
and we had
that's-
one that, the last switch they installed at HAS, just, I don't know, 6 or 8 months before I left, a Sony switcher. And there was even an online tutorial, but it was somebody whose native language was Japanese, and they could speak English. So, when they started talking about mix effects rows, they would talk about M over E1. You know, it's like, what's M over E1? It's like, they're talking about mix effects rows. You know, it's because they could read English, but they didn't know what they were reading. They didn't know what they were reading. So this tutorial was just terrible. It was terrible. But yeah, he's right. If you come in here, fire up the cameras, set up so you can do a chroma key, get a couple lower thirds, and maybe a story or two. It doesn't even matter what it is, and just switch through it. It'll get, after I get to play with it a little bit, and if he comes back, Alan comes back, then I'll be to a point where probably I can really learn something that's really, really useful. But it is a lot of just hunting that. But Tyler, by far, is more than anybody else.
So just dedicate yourself to just spending some time to learn it. And if you do that, then you'll learn what you need to learn.
And for you guys, it might be more just learning what it can do for you. It might be someone else that helps you through the graphics or something, but just learning what you have available to you. If you want to put graphics in your stories or full screens and that sort of thing.
And anytime you can use appropriate and well-coordinated graphics, it really helps tell the story. What you don't want on TV is just all talking heads. That doesn't have any interest. So you'll notice in your commercial programs where it'll break up. You'll have in the news, you'll have a piece of video in the background with a voiceover, then you'll cut and there'll be a reporter out there interviewing somebody, and then they may go back to the station and they'll have pictures in the back that'll be about the story, what they're speaking about. So, and there may throw a chart or a graph up on there and talk about it. So there's lots of things that you can do to sort of give life to your story and help tell it quickly, because that's what you find in commercial television is you're seldom doing a 5-minute package. If you're doing news, you're doing 20 seconds or you're doing 40 seconds. If you get a whole minute or so, wow, you can really hit the big jackpot. So everything's very concise, and to help tell that story, you want all the best pictures, all the best graphs, all the best voice bites, because that's what's going to sell it for you to your news audience.
When you do your newscasts, do you mix up the stories, or you basically assign people to just go out and do little packages, or do you do voiceover and just SOTs and things like that?
Usually, and again, this is kind of dependent upon the class size, depending on the semester. Last fall, they only had 4 students in the class, so a lot of them had to pull double duty. So if one person was producing, they would also produce a package. So they would go out, shoot it themselves. They would take a microphone and they would do an on-camera report on their story. and then they would edit that together. So you would have someone on camera during the report, and they were talking over the video they shot as well.
And then just do a voiceover. But it would basically be a package.
Right.
It
It
was-
was,
So, but you don't have your anchor sitting on set, like doing voiceover video to a soundbite?
they've done that as well.
Yeah.
It just depends on the story, what the producer assigns, or what stories they have that
So,
week.
but you do mix it up,
Mhm.
because generally, for the most part, you just have the anchors toss it to a
Right.
package, you know, come back out, they say something about it, and it slows it down a lot, so, you know, the pacing, that when we were always worried about story count, getting your story count up, and the pacing, and making it as fast as you can, you know, because people's ADD, they would lose interest. And that's another thing I would like for us to try to do, is get to a point where our anchors are actually doing just VOs. We could increase our story count, you know, by just having them voiceover
Right.
video. And we could do that through here, whereas it's tough to do, you know.
A show we do all the time where it's just our talent doing voiceovers, our football coaches show. We just had our first game last Thursday night, so what we do, we'll cut up each quarter and pull about 2 to 3 minutes of highlights from each quarter. And during the segment, the head coach and the host of the show will be talking, and as they're talking, we'll start playing the highlights, and it'll just be 2 minutes straight of the first quarter highlights. And that way the coach and the host will actually have a TV setup where they can see what's going out live. They'll be able to see the highlights and talk over them about what's happening. Oh, this was a big play. This guy here, he was able to break through the line, had a big run for 40 yards, et cetera, et cetera. So
We have a TV next to the green screen,
so you can see what's going on, and that helps your host or your talent, your anchors, whoever.
And you have IFB, so you can talk to the talent.
We do, but we mainly use our floor director. They're the ones giving the cues, and we have a time limit for each segment. Like our coach's show is 24 minutes, split up into 4 segments. So as a producer, I'll talk to the host before and say, hey, this first segment we're going to shoot for 4 minutes. Second segment about 8 minutes in length.
And you have camera operators
Mhm.
still. And see, we didn't have floor directors anymore because, well, first they did away with the floor director position and let the camera operators do it, and then we got robotic cameras. So at HAS, there's no floor director
Right.
and no camera operators. Many times the anchor, if it's a single anchor show, they're out in the studio by themselves.
Yeah. And we've
So-
had
So
to.
we have to talk to them in their ear almost constantly.
We've had to do that before. If for some reason we have to shoot a show when none of our students are scheduled to work, we'll just set our cameras and we'll pull out the IFB. And our director will have to talk through the IFB to the host, like, hey, here's your 2-minute cue, 1-minute cue, you got 30 seconds left. So we've done it all.
Right.
We know what it's like to have no camera operators, no floor director, but we also know what it's like.
Unfortunately, if you don't have camera operators, they never learn the composition
Right, right.
and floor skills. So it's, yeah, we had, how many cameras? 4, 5, 6, 7 robotic cameras. And then if we put somebody on a handheld camera, it was about the only time there was a camera operator in the studio.
Other questions? Think you good to go? All right. Great. Thank you.